Well, welcome back, everybody. I was just telling a CXO friend of mine over breakfast how I have the very best job. By day, I get to work with awesome, cool, smart CIOs who share my passion for developing future-ready culture and future-ready teams, leaders, and workforce. And then there's the nights and weekends work where I do a ton of reading, a lot of research that allow me to create content, a lot of content for presentations, panels, fireside chats, and for the podcast. But when you love what you do, it doesn't seem like work. And I was reminded of that as I was working on this episode featuring Monica Caldas, the global CIO for Liberty Mutual Insurance. Monica, in a word, is special. I mean, she's really special. She's got that it factor. You know what I mean? It's hard to describe. So at the end of this, if you're watching, listening, I'd love to have you drop me a note and tell me what you think it is. So as the leader of 5,000 technologists, Monica has established herself as one of the top digital executives in our profession today. She's bold, she's courageous, she's got that ability to lead large transformations and in a very decisive, growth-oriented way. So I want to welcome you in, Monica. Thanks so much for being here. Let me shine the light on you, your story, your Monica-isms, your leadership superpowers. And hopefully by the time we're done, we're going to know what that it is, that thing that makes you so darn special.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to have conversation and talk about not just me, but the team that I'm part of and all the fabulous things that we're working on. So I'm thrilled. Thank you.
We will do all that. Every time we talk, you talk about the team. So I knew you would go there early and often. So all good. But I want to start at the top. And by that, I mean your CEO, your boss, Tim Sweeney.
Yeah.
And, full disclosure, I know Tim well, and I can say with confidence three things about him. Number one, he is one of the best CEOs in the business today. And I would debate that all day long. And I think you would too. Number two, he is rock star smart, or as you like to say in Boston, he's wicked smart, right? Right?
That's true. Yeah.
And he is one of the most digitally savvy CEOs out there. And it's pretty impressive. And so take us inside that special CEO-CIO partnership. And what's it like to work with a boss who's so darn curious and incredibly tech savvy?
One word, it's a blessing.
All right.
And I'll tell you why. Because what I appreciate, and I agree, first of all, with everything you said, I am thrilled to be learning every day from him as well and partnering with him on our mission here in Liberty. And why I say a blessing is because as a technology leader, I get into a lot of different details on our existing ecosystem and where we want to take it and connect that to the business aspirations, et cetera. And when Tim and I have these conversations, I always appreciate that I never start the conversation at what I call a step zero, right? Like baselining. Well, why does Gen AI matter? Why does modernizing the stack matter? It never starts there. It always starts at step 5, 6. And when you have a partner like that, a leader like that, it creates a very fast-paced environment because the dynamic of that engagement kind of pushes the conversation forward and you can go a lot faster, which I love. I think speed is really important in the times that we're operating in. And so having that is super helpful and beneficial for the company. The other piece that's really important is when you have someone who's tech savvy and really curious and wicked smart, as you said, is it creates this incredible collaborative problem solving. And there's an exploration of different approaches and different paths. And for a CIO to have a CEO that you can coordinate and connect at that level to be able to problem solve, because the things we're working on are big, hairy problems, I like to say. They're big opportunities that will set the company up for the future. And so that requires a lot of dialogue and different paths because there's never just one way to solve something. And so I really appreciate that having a CEO like that creates a fast-paced environment, which I thrive in. And it also creates this dynamic of incredible problem-solving capabilities. So it is a blessing.
Yeah, that's great. You mentioned speed. You mentioned the uniqueness of that relationship, and I want to talk about the company. Um, my wife, by the way, fun fact: her first job out of college was at Liberty Mutual as a programmer.
Oh,
So
that's
uh,
great.
uh, way before, way long time ago, but the company's changed so much. It's
Yeah.
50 billion, I think,
Yeah.
Fortune 87. It's a
Yeah.
powerhouse brand.
Yeah.
Um, Americas, Europe, Asia Pac, right? It's just
Yeah.
big and complex, and so hard to go fast and at
Yeah.
speed, right? So when you're working with Tim and your C-suite peers, you're talking a lot about getting that first mover advantage to get that tech forward
Yeah.
momentum going. What does that look like?
It is a complicated, complex. I wouldn't say complicated. I would say complex in many ways. 27 countries. You will have to navigate through a lot of different decisions and paths and options. And so, being tech forward for us, for me, when I say that, I mean, at the end of the day, we have a very important purpose in the world in terms of the products and services that we offer. We help people take risk and be able to have their small business, to be able to navigate large enterprises across the globe, to also to the individual, a home and a car, et cetera. And so I love our core purpose and what our product is. And so how do you then enable that with the full power of what technology can do? So we are empowering, we are enabling all our employees so that we can serve our customers better around the globe. So that's tech forward is in service of that. I know sometimes people say, oh, we're a tech company. We don't say that at Liberty. I don't believe that. We are very much an insurance company that has got a very important mission in the world and purpose. So, tech forward for me, and when I say that, it means how do we, being a 100-plus-year-old company, how do we continue to evolve and thrive for another 100 plus years? And to do that, you've got to look at both what got you here, the values that make us who we are, and how do we continue that? That's really important to the fabric, the DNA of our culture, our people. But then how do you complement that with emerging technology to solve problems or create potential new services and offerings that create even bigger impact? So, tech forward is not just an idea, it's about leveraging the culture we have, but then how do we turbocharge some of that innovation energy? How do we encourage employees to think creatively, experiment, explore new ways to improve efficiency? All of this to say customers at the center of everything we do, the policyholders. So it's really about strategic use of technology, knowing when to buy, when to build, when to rent, knowing what capabilities to differentiate versus what capabilities to just have, but they're not going to be the ones that you're going to spend the most energy on. So tech forward means all those things. It means both leveraging what we have and the culture we have, but also harnessing the full power of tech to be able to get us to offer better products and services at the next level. So I know sometimes people talk about automation are these low level tactics, and tech forward also means having a strategy, a North Star, a direction of travel that then you supplement with these tactics along the way. And that's how you can harness emerging tech in a very deliberate way rather than just chasing ideas and new tools that come out. So, very deliberate as well in how we're shaping that.
That's outstanding. Very, very inspirational, actually. And I'm going to ask you kind of probably a hard, unfair question, but it's a broad question. So,
Right.
how would you describe your overall body of work? And
Oh,
just I kind of want to get into how you lead, how
yeah.
you think, but how would you describe that?
Um, at the macro level, if I think about my career this far, I would say that I am always seeking out challenging bodies of work. And prior to coming to Liberty, I spent almost 2 decades at GE, and there's a ton of opportunity to move around between business units, et cetera. And I was always looking for what's the challenge? What's the transformation opportunity? And so I think that's just in my DNA, the idea of challenging the status quo, pursuing hairy challenges. But what I've learned and I always carry with me is that it's not just about strategy and ideas, it's also about operations and execution. And so I always come at problem statements. And if you look at my overall body of work, I always approach it with two perspectives. One is you got to play defense, and the second is offense at all times. And so I would describe my overall body of work as I always come to the table with both defense and offense. How do you do that? And so if you look at what we're doing here at Liberty Mutual, it's very much aligned. The technology strategy is very much aligned to defense and offensive plays at all times. So what does that mean? Defensive side of our mission is we have an ecosystem. It is global. It is large. It is complex. We're serving both commercial customers, retail customers, investment sides of the business. So we have three different types of businesses that we have to support and enable globally. And so job number one on the defensive side is secure and stable systems. If we don't have that, we don't get to do anything else, is what I say to my team, because we have to deliver on the promises we make to our policyholders. So being there for them at their time of need means our claim system has to be up. Our policy administration system has to be up. So that responsibility and accountability on secure, stable systems. The second part of defensive play that, and maybe this is my GE training, but it's about the fiduciary responsibility. We have to ensure that we operate an efficient shop. Operations in technology, and if you look at technology budgets, are constantly being challenged and they continue to grow, especially as you think about securing your operations. And so we have to be very thoughtful in how we deploy capital, how we make investments, how we ensure that they're creating value. So that defensive side both is the system side, but also the fiduciary side and making sure that we deliver on that. On the offensive side, it's how do you digitize the future and capitalize on data? How do you understand how to serve the policyholders to the best of our abilities? And the partners, the agents that we work with, the brokers that we work with, how do you connect that? And so for us, we think a lot about what are the capabilities and then how do you differentiate them? So knowing how to partner with third parties for buying certain capabilities versus engineering some of them ourselves. So having that ability. So I would say, I know I say this quite a bit to my peers, is I sometimes it feels like we're flying the plane and changing the engine all at the same time, especially a 100-year-old company. We're constantly having to modernize our technology stack and capitalize on this emerging tech that exists. And that's why when you look at my whole body of work, I would describe it that way. And I think I have never been in a role where I just did one side of the equation. I've always done both. I've always had to operate and be strategic and think about, okay, how do you deploy new capabilities and how do you engineer for the future? So that's how I would describe it. It's less of a sequencing. It's more of it's in parallel.
Yeah. I think we're getting a little sense of that it factor I introduced you with. That is outstanding. I wasn't sure where you'd take that question. And, I think one of your other it factors and one of the things that differentiates the very best in our industry is you're great communicators, right? You know how to take people on that journey, put people in that cathedral before the first brick is laid. And there's so much lack of clarity in the world today. So anytime you can provide clarity, you get your team, your 5,000 technologists, your business colleagues on that same path, rowing the boat. Could you open up with how do you communicate? How are you so good at this?
Oh my goodness. I would say in my head, I'm always thinking about whether it's my direct employees, we have 5,000 Liberty engineers worldwide, or our partners, we have another 5,000 technologists that work with us. So a team of 10, or across the company, we have 45,000 employees. I always think my job as a leader, and any leader in any level of the organization, really, You have to create alignment and partnerships. There is nowhere that I know of where you can do it alone. It's a team sport. You have to have a community. You have to have partnerships. You have to understand each other. You have to put the effort to go and seize and sit and learn and watch. And so for me, alignment and partnerships are key. I would also say that there's probably two books that I would put out there for people that have been very influential in my own personal philosophy. One of them is Team of Teams by retired US Army General Stanley McChrystal. If you're familiar with that book, it's all about breaking down hierarchies, building connections, and spending time on creating cohesive teams. And in there, there's a lot that is required to do that. You have, Gartner calls this concept fusion teams. If you have different disciplines coming together, they need clarity of the vision and the North Star. Where are we going? In order to do that, it's not just about saying where you're going. You have to also create the practices or the frameworks that then can create those paths and guide people to the direction of travel. But at the same time, you have to empower the teams to drive. You have to be clear on how to make decisions, who makes what decision. We have a formula that we use that was introduced to me by McKinsey called DARE. And it's basically being very crisp about who's the decision maker, who's the recommender, and going from there to have clarity of who are the people around the table and what is expected of them, what is their role, and then what's their obligation as well. And so having that clarity at the nuance level is really important. I would say the second book that I read quite a long time ago, but it just spoke to me. It's called Change Your Questions, Change Your Life by Marilee Adams, if you're familiar with that one. And it's really about, it's embracing an open and learner mindset. And I always, at the beginning of my career, let's call it my first 5 years, I thought that success was that I knew the answer, that as a technologist, I had to know how to articulate the CPUs that I was going to need for this new piece of hardware and do all the math and have the answers. And while that was true at that time, the reality is the world keeps changing. As a technologist, you have to continuously be evolving. And so this book really cemented for me that it's less about knowing all the answers and it's more about being curious, coming at it from an inquiry mindset, but also then framing your questions in a way that actually invites dialogue. And you can't be anchored to previous experiences or ideas yourself. You have to be open-minded. So those are two that I would say that are strategies that are part of, I guess, my philosophy on communicating with clarity. Starts with being open, but then setting the North Star, but having that thought process that you've got to also give guidance and have some kind of grounding for people on how to proceed. And so that's my approach really when I'm communicating. I always put myself in other people's shoes and think about, well, what might I ask if I was coming at it from that angle? Another piece of advice I would give, and this might sound funny to people out there, but I have 2 children. I have a 14-year-old and 11-year-old, and I actually do my presentations in front of them every once in a while. The ones that are a little bit more tricky and technology nuanced, I'll run a couple pages by them and say, well, did you understand what mom was saying? And they give me some really raw feedback. And it helps frame the ideas in a way that are more approachable. And I just appreciate different perspectives is how I would summarize it. And I always try to put myself in other people's shoes and think, how might I approach this idea if I were, I receive it, how might I approach it? So that's a little bit of my process and a little bit of my philosophy as well.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a tough audience on the home front, right? These kids are so smart today. It's incredible.
Yeah, it is. Especially my high schooler. You're very much on top of all things tech.
I love it. Fruit doesn't fall far from the tree, as they say, Monica. It's funny. I just kicked off one of our leadership programs this morning. It's a 9-month program, and I told the cohort, I said, listen, I get to hang out with people like Monica all the time, and there's two things you need to know. One is the best leaders are learners, like not just casually when it's convenient, but like intense, intentional, purposeful learners. The other one is they're great teachers, right? They teach, they share, right? And so, we've got our first mystery question teed up. All right. So these are going to be fun. We've got some really, really great people for you. And this actually speaks to some of that learner philosophy of yours and how you put it into practice. So let's listen in, and you're going to know right away when you hear the voice who this is. So check it out.
Monica, you have an incredible capacity to stay ahead of key trends that are out there in the marketplace, and then make sure we're concentrating our efforts here at Liberty on new capabilities that we think can make a big difference for our customers. I think you have a keen sense of what to really dig into, and then you're able to rally the team in a way that keeps us from chasing every shiny object we see out there, but at the same time, focusing on the right few things so that we aren't late to the game with any new powerful technologies. So my question is, how do you assess where we should focus our efforts? And from there, how do you influence and inspire others to take a new journey together?
Yeah, that's Jim McPhee. He is an amazing colleague here at Liberty, a COO for the company, an incredible amount of expertise in the insurance industry. And yes, he knows my level of curiosity because since I joined Liberty 6 years ago, I've been able to work with him and always pepper him with questions all the time. Could we do it this way? How about this? Why does it work like this? So yes, I appreciate his question very much.
Well, and Jim described you. He said, Monica is like the ocean. You just can't hold it back. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yes. And so, I often go to Jim and say, okay, so here's something that I am seeing happening on the manufacturing side. I think that could be really relevant for us in financial services. And so Jim experiences me from connecting a lot of dots frequently and often. And that's probably a result of having been in financial services and manufacturing. And now, back in financial services, I see similar themes and trends and I connect patterns. And that's probably just, curiosity. I'm just very curious. And I stay on top of things that are happening. So, when I was in manufacturing, we were working on Brilliant Factory, digital twins, digital threads. Lo and behold, that level of continuous information loop is really important in the world we're operating today outside of manufacturing itself. So yes, he's a terrific thought partner, an incredible deep sense of the business and expertise. So yes, he experiences me always coming out with all these different perspectives and ideas. And I would say, how do I assess was his question, and things I often talk to him about is, okay, we've got all these potential paths. How do we reduce the noise so that we know what to focus on? And I would say curiosity is really important. But then if you're just constantly ricocheting, you're not going to create value. And for me, it's not just about asking questions, but then putting them into action is really important. And so there is a discipline that we've introduced into the company on the technology side where we have this emerging technology radar. And I think most CIOs probably have a version of this, which is just you can leverage Gartner's hype cycles, you can leverage all kinds of different sources of information. But for us, we take it a couple steps further. We not only look at what is the emerging technology, we then look at how does that connect to our starting point, our moment in time that we're in, and more importantly, to the business goals that we're trying to achieve and our aspirations. So we triangulate several data points, and then we map these emerging tech options out, or ideas. It doesn't have to be just emerging technology like Gen AI. It could be other ideas on automation of maybe things we haven't done before. BPO, BPA, these kinds of ideas that are out there in the industry, and maybe we just haven't leaned into it, or we have and we want to change course. So there is this triangulation of these ideas and mapping out the value and the opportunity, and then having a conversation more broadly than just in tech, but actually having a conversation with our business partners and connecting those dots and saying, here's some top 5 that we think are really important. How do we intersect them to the aspirations? This is how we see it. How do we connect that? And then experimenting. We deployed an experimentation framework that works across our teams and brings together different disciplines. Again, I'm a big fan of having different perspectives at the table. So engineering, always really important. The data domain depth, really important. The subject matter expertise in the domain that you're in, whether for us that may be distribution, so sales area, or that might be claims, policy administration, et cetera. Bringing that together and then experimenting. Just running a couple tests, incubating the idea and seeing if it has legs. And then, really important, know if you're going to pivot, you learn something, it's not going to materialize, put it on the shelf, let's watch, or you're actually going to spend more energy on it and take it forward and try to scale it. I think that's the other piece that's really important. Sometimes we like to experiment just as technologists and engineers. And then engineering, we want to get it right and you keep working and you keep working at it. And then you waste valuable resources in overworking it. So knowing when to also pause and reflect and pivot is important as well.
Really, really great insights. And I can tell you love what you do. It just comes through you and you're having a blast. But then I can't imagine what that executive team meeting is like when you and Jim and Tim are together. What a rock star team. And I have another of your superpowers I want to unpack, and it's another one of those I think is an Achilles for most, Monica. And I'll start out with a question: did you happen to take a long driving trip anytime with the kids?
Oh yeah, we go to Florida from Boston. That's a very long trip.
That's a long trip. So that's like 20 something hours.
Yeah.
And the data tells us that 32 minutes in is when you get the first, you know what the question is.
Are we there yet?
Are we there yet? Right. So, I find it fascinating tying that to the big, bold, long-term, big, hairy initiatives that you lead, right?
Yeah.
Transformations, success in our world is like, what, 30% on a good day? I mean, and I always think about people like you having the courageous leadership, that ability to keep and sustain that, message it, keep people engaged. Things change, people change, the world changes, but you got to keep it going. And technically, we're never really there yet, ever, right? So talk about that, how you sustain these big, hairy initiatives.
Well, one piece of advice that Tim has always given me is sometimes we put a lot of energy into reshaping the message and reframing it. And he's saying, really, make it super simple and just repeat it over and over again so people know that you're still working on the same thing. If you try to change the wording, work really hard on the presentation side of it, you people get confused and say, do we just finish it? Are we working on it? Is this different? Is this new? So I think being very thoughtful about clarity of what you're trying to do, and then making sure that you continue that conversation as you navigate through it, bring people along and say, okay, we're now at step 2. We're now going to step 5. And I'm a big fan of a 10-step process in my analogies to make it real for people, to say, look, we're starting this body of work. It's big modernization. It's going to be multi-year. But by the way, multi-year doesn't mean we set it and we check back in 5 years. Multi-year means we've got to break down the smaller components and milestones that are connected to value, and we have to see those through. And if you get those done right, you earn the right. You earn the right to keep going. You can't just set it and forget it and say, check back with me in 2 years. So I don't prescribe to multi-year bodies of work that are set it and forget it. And I don't think CIOs today do much of that, because we've learned through the statistic that you mentioned that formula for doing work does not produce results, meaningful results. So that agile mindset is important, but agile does not mean lack of discipline and focus and accountability. In fact, it means breaking things down, iterating through it, having that continuous conversation. So I would say that is pillar number 1. is the simplicity and the clarity of the message. Pillar number 2 would be breaking things down and having clear milestones in between the big ones. But number 3 is, I think, that speaks to intestinal fortitude, is being very honest about what this change means and the risk that you collectively are taking on. There's no such thing as this is just a technology project in my mind. We're not a technology company. We're an insurance company, and technology is powering us. And so everything we do has to be aligned with our business partners, and we have to take shared accountability on the transformation path that we are on. And so I always love analogies, and I say, okay, my favorite example, I'll share it with you, is I always say, okay, this kind of transformation is going to be as if we were putting a patient on the table and operating on the heart. In order to do that, you have to have a readiness for change. So a fitness score before you go to the operating table. I need to know, are you a healthy eater? Are you eating your vegetables? Are you drinking plenty of water? Are you going to survive on the operating table? And so we have an honest conversation about readiness for change and what is required in order to have a successful outcome. So that's always conversation 1. And I can tell you that in my 6 years here, we've kicked off some bodies of work. After that conversation of that readiness for change, that fitness evaluation, we decided, in fact, we weren't ready to go on this big transformation. We have to address these gaps before we put the patient on the operating table. And that saved us money. That saved us heartache. That's, this is big, and it's everybody needs to be involved and bought in and understanding of what they're signing up for. And then on the other side is you go through this transformation. What comes out is something different. It's a different business process, a different way of working. People's roles, responsibilities may have evolved. How are you going to help people navigate the change curve? So on the output side is this, okay, when you do major surgery, you've got to go through this physical therapy and getting back into the swing of things and learning how to operate now with whatever that was adjusted and changed. Same thing. You go through these massive transformations. On the other side, you have to have a hypercare period. On the technology side, that is not new information. We always have hypercare on the tech component. But what I'm talking about is hypercare needs to be on the entire system that has been touched, the people, the process, and the technology. And so when I think about that intestinal fortitude question, it's about A, we're all understanding what we're signing up for, but B, we also know the methodology by which we're always going to run through this. How are we going to navigate and move through it? Which is why I always use this. Okay, we're at step 1, we're kicking off. We're at step 5, we're at step 10. We're now coming out on the other side, and now we have to make sure that the adoption is there. And I think this has proven to be a formula that has worked and also that has brought many people along, not just a technology organization.
Monica, you can operate in my heart anytime. I appreciate that, and I think you give us a good sense of why some of these transformations aren't successful, right? We force fit it. We don't say no when we should, and that's leadership. That's courageous leadership. I would do you a great disservice if I didn't talk about your business acumen, and you work hard at that. You changed industry. You made a big industry change, right?
Yeah.
You had said, I think, 17 years at GE.
Yeah.
And different businesses there. So talk to us about how do you learn and stay abreast of the business? Because you're very astute on the business side of things.
I would say that I'm not afraid. What I like to say is I'm not afraid to skin my knees, meaning I'm not afraid to make a mistake. I own it. We're human. I don't know anyone that is a perfect human being. Zero. And I say this to my kids. I say this to my team. I say, I was working in financial services. Within that, I was working franchise finance, vendor fleet management. Then I went deep into the fleet business and leasing. Then I went into the rail business on the leasing side, then went into locomotives and engineering and manufacturing engines. those are so different. And every time I was always given the advice, Monica, do a go and see, go learn, go sit with the engineers that drive a locomotive engine and understand the technology solutions you are deploying, how that is received. Go sit with our leasing supervisor, understand how the capabilities we've just built into this ecosystem, how they're using it. And so I learned that early on, that you just have to go and see and learn and watch. And you also have to be very humble in saying, I don't know. Here's my question. And then you have to push through the fact that you're going to make mistakes because you don't know. And have people around you that will be comfortable in calling you out and saying, hey, that's actually not how it is. And have the humility to accept that feedback and also maintain a positive attitude, because you will make mistakes. Somebody will tell you, you can't take that and say, oh, I'm never doing that again. You're going to say, in fact, I tell the story. This might give you a little bit of an insight into how I am. But I tell this story because I was a child growing up. I think I might have been like 5 or 6. And my dad tells the story because he says, you're always so stubborn. And I'm glad that has paid off. And I was a child, and there was this stone wall, and I would say, like, I don't know, maybe it was 2 or 3 feet tall, but I'm a petite woman to begin with. So as a child, I was even smaller. And my mom and dad would say, don't go on the wall. I wanted to climb on the wall and pretend I was a gymnast and do all these kind of tricks. I am not athletic, and I never have been. I definitely was not a gymnast. And I would go on the wall, and I fell off a couple times, and they kept saying, do not stop it. Do not go on that wall. And eventually, one of the times I was on, I fell off, and they have this picture of me next to this wall because I was so stubborn about it. And I'm completely scraped up. I have cuts, my arms, my face, my nose. And then they have another picture of me, and I don't know, like maybe sometime like back on that wall. And my dad says, this probably is a great picture of who you are. You fall off, you get back on. You fall off, you get back on. And so I think that probably is resiliency, the ability to bounce back, is probably in the back of my head, that sense of, okay, I'm not afraid of a big challenge. I'm going to pursue it. I am going to do a seat ride, learn. I'm going to just not be afraid of the unknown. And then I think, beyond that, I'm very intrigued by these transformations at the global scale. I love big challenges. So, being at GE and then thinking about Liberty and the opportunity they put in front of me, that really spoke to me. It was the first big global CIO in the retail markets division. They were trying to operate at scale globally, hadn't done that before, operating very much individually, local by local, country, et cetera. And I said, okay, I'll put my Portuguese to work, my Spanish to work. I'll put my global capability to work. It's a huge challenge. I'd love to try it. And here I am 6 years later. So it's worked out.
Congratulations. Yeah. You just hit a bunch of chords. I find as I spend time with people like yourself, the best in the business, that you all lead what I call with heart, and heart being an acronym: humble, empathy, adaptability, resiliency, transparency, right? And how you instill that in your people. And so I want to double click on the adaptability factor. Okay. So let's listen into a mystery questioner who knows you really well. You're going to be very surprised when you hear this voice. So let's cue this up and you'll tell us who this is.
Monica, from leasing fleet vehicles to selling locomotives and now insurance, you've worked across very different industries. Can you talk about how you developed the superpower of adaptability?
Who is that?
Another Jim.
That's right.
Jim Fowler. Oh, incredible leader. I had the opportunity to be part of Jim's team at GE. And Jim was a great mentor, and still today is a mentor. And he's also in insurance, so we do cross paths here and there. But yeah, incredible leader, and I'm very lucky to have worked with him.
Yeah, special people. Appreciate him taking the time. We're going to feature Jim February 5th,
Ah,
2025. So
I'll stay tuned to that. That'll be fabulous.
get excited about that. But yeah, talk about that whole adaptability superpower of yours.
It probably started as a child. So my family and I we immigrated from Portugal to the United States when I was 8. I remember distinctly because I had a birthday in the summer. We just moved, and then in September I started school. 3rd grade, I went to an American school. I did not speak any English, zero English, zero. And my mom and dad said, well, here's the school. Good luck. And they didn't speak English either. So I show up. The teacher is very kind, speaking very slowly. I remember that feeling. And I'm like closing my eyes because I'm thinking back to that experience of the kindness that was given to me. I didn't cry. I was very much like, I'm here. What do I do? And they paired me up with another girl, and she was from Venezuela, and I'm from Portugal. And she spoke Spanish, but her English was a little better than mine. And she was my translator. And my first language is Portuguese. And so Portuguese and Spanish are different languages, although very much cousins. So I figured out how to understand her. And I developed this Portuñol, which is Portuguese and Spanish all together. And so it was that experience as a child where you don't know anything, but you're in this classroom, people are kind, you reach out, they will help you. And so don't be afraid. And fast forward 3 months, I was speaking English with a perfect American accent. My parents couldn't believe. And it was because I didn't have any other way. I was just mimicking and learning. And, the school did provide English as a second language helper to help me and here and there. But it was not what it is today. And so that adaptability probably started very much in that kind of way. All those experiences as an immigrant, you just have a different journey. And so I think that was very helpful. Seeing my parents, I'm an only child, so always at the table with the adults, hearing all the adult conversations and hearing all the problems. And it was never a problem. My dad would always say, okay, it's a challenge, how are we going to fix this? It was never oh, we're stuck. It was like, okay, we don't have money for this. Let's go get another job. There's always a way to solve it. And so I carry that to college, being mostly the only girl in my, technology oriented classes. And at one point, one of my classmates said, oh, you're the girl, you get to do the presentation. And I was like, oh, no way. That does not imply that is the only thing I know. And I marched over to the teacher and said, I would like a new team, or I would like to be by myself, but I am not getting to actually develop my skill with a team that won't give me a chance. And so just being adaptable to the circumstance, but also speaking up and also being humble. You don't know what you don't know, and you have to be open to other people helping you. And you have to, I always come at it with, people have enormous hearts. And I think us humans, we walk around with positive intent. And I always believe that people start out with positive intent. And if you lean into that, you will be okay. And so that's how I come at things. And so that's probably a lot, but a little bit of how I think about adaptability and how it's shown up in my life.
Yeah, great question from Jim. Thank you again, and just helps us understand you better and learn from you. And I want to double click as we talked about the people side of the equation a little bit earlier. You alluded to that, but you spent a lot of time thinking about where the puck is going from a people perspective. You're helping your people grow and learn and progress, drive more impact. You're big on execution. How do you approach all that from a people workforce? You have 5,000 technologists there.
It is challenging even today, I think more so than ever, because skills are evolving. The environment which we operate in technology, you learn something in college or in a technology oriented course, and you come out and you put it into practice, and then it changes and things keep evolving. And so you always feel like you're in a little bit of quicksand, like things are always moving around you. And how do you kind of readjust and make sure that you're standing on some kind of solid ground to move forward? And have impact. We all want to have impact. So thinking about skills and helping people, knowing where the puck is going, and that I always think, and this might be, back to my own experiences and my mentorship circles that I've been part of. I always like to say that I stand on the shoulder of giants, Jim Fowler being one of them in the technology world. And there's so many, Segal's Army, there's just so many wonderful leaders that I've had a chance to learn from. What I've always learned is that you have to coach. You have to think of yourself as a coach. You are there to understand people, understand their skills, understand where they're headed. Not everyone wants to be a CIO, but everyone wants to contribute in a meaningful way and be fulfilled. And so when I think about my leadership and our team and how we think about growing others, we have 5 strategic technology priorities today. And one of them is empowering our people. What does that mean for us? It's about growing our people. Whether you want to be the best engineer, whether you want to have a variety of different skills to be fulfilled in solving problems, or whether you want to be on a path to a bigger leadership role. And we do that globally. And so we start with that is part of our strategic tech priorities, that our job as leaders is to grow our people. And that's a non-negotiable. And if you think about the liberty values, that's also embedded in how we think about and talk about our people. So that's one. Then it's how you show up as an individual. We do roundtables, we meet one-on-one, I do skip levels, all with the opportunity and the lens of how can I coach this person be the best version that they can be. And so that is a top priority for me in knowing where the puck is going in terms of skills. And then maybe some tactical things to make it real. It's about how do we then have bodies of work within our company that are actually giving people better tools. So we've implemented some tools to help our engineers and our IT operations people have better access to information and be able to do their job better. How do we think about giving the right training to our employees? But it's not just about, oh, here's a course, go take it. But also then how do we, help them understand, well, which training is best for them? And we work backwards to a skills-based model. We're actually putting that into action right now. We're in the process of rolling that out completely, but we are shifting to a skills-based conversation. And so having every one of my 5,000 employees have a skills assessment that they've done on their own, that they then use to talk about their growth and development plans with their direct managers so that they can understand what's the road to the path that they're on and what training is best for them and what other job opportunities have they been thinking about that they could start to pull towards. And so changing the way that people think about careers from it's a ladder to it's a jungle gym, options and opportunities. And so that is also the people side of the equation, how we're thinking about it. So it's multifaceted. But I would say it all starts with your own individual experience. And for me, I benefited from people making time for me to mentor me, to coach me. And I carry that today. And then I say to my team, well, how do you measure success? How do you know that's working? And for me, it's enabling promotion and growth of people. And that's how you know that what you're doing is working and people are fulfilled in the job they're in or getting promoted to the next level. And that's how you know you're successful.
I can see why you've got people who are so passionate what they're doing. You attract great people there. This is not our grandparents' insurance company, right? This is a really exciting time. And so, I almost named the podcast something along the lines of putting points on the board with Monica Caldas, because talk about the importance of that. We're getting down to the wire here. So I have a couple more mystery questions, but I want to get you talking about the importance of that. How do you think about putting points on the board? What is the point of the board?
Yeah, outcomes. It is all about outcomes. We have to be creating value. We have to be delivering. It's not like, I'll give you an example. Every technology department is rolling out a new system, a new tool, fill in the blank, or whatever is local to you. How do you as a leader measure success? And I ask my team this all the time. Is success that you've turned something on? Or is success that you have changed the way that a product is used, is serviced, a customer experience has changed for the better? A new product is now being able to be sold in a part of the world where it wasn't before. What is the outcome? That's points on the board. Point on the board is measuring success based on the outcome that was delivered, not the output, but the outcome. And so that's how I think about it. Points on the board is so simple. And it's got to be continuous. I look at it as a quarterly basis. What points on the board have we put on this quarter? And it can be in secure, stable systems. We deployed a variety of patches to the environment, and we created zero business interruption. That's points on the board. We delivered a new capability, and we have enabled this service to now be turned on for these policyholders in this part of the world that we weren't able to before. That's points on the board. So there's different ways to look at it, but it's really beyond an output, and it is more about the outcome that you're driving.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's hadn't heard that before. It's really good. I've got a great mystery question coming up for you that's going to touch on your leadership philosophy and style. And actually, we merged two of his questions together. So let's listen in, and those will be fun for you.
Hey, Monica, could you share your favorite leadership quote and why it is so? Also, if you had a spirit animal, what would it be and why?
Love it. So yes, I absolutely know that voice. That is one of my colleagues that is part of my team. So Andrew Palmer, an incredible technologist and CIO that leads our retail market division. So I appreciate him asking me that question, and he knows this answer. my favorite leadership quote is, I'll shorten it, but I say this all the time. I even say it at home, and I always say, okay, look, we may be on the right path, but we'll get run over for just sitting down. And that quote is by Will Rogers. And the whole thing is, it's if you're even on the right track, you'll get run over if you just sit there. You have to do something. You have to take a step forward or a leap of faith. You have to stop waiting for circumstances to change so that you won't have to. And I love that quote because sometimes people are like, I'm just going to sit on my hands and wait and see. And hopefully I won't have to do much. I don't want to stick my neck out. I'm going to wait for others to also change, and then I'll join the pack. You got to stick your head out. You got to look around, jump, leap, do something. So I always say, okay, gang, we may be on the right path. We're doing this with Gen AI. We may be on the right path. We're going to get run over if we're just sitting here. So I say that often, and that's just, I guess, the fast-paced nature of how I operate and how I want my team to be always thinking about, like, okay, this is great, but there's always a good, better, best path. And are we thinking about where this needs to go? And then the second question about spirit animal, this one's funny because I'm a petite woman, and actually my kids said this about me, and so I'll just use this. But they said, hey, Mom, sometimes, you're quiet and you're thinking about it, and then you just come at us almost like a rhino charging. And you've got this, horn in the front, and that could be magical because that's like a unicorn. But at the same time, and that's my daughter speaking, but then at the same time, you're serious about what we need to do. So you're like a rhino that's like a unicorn, but tougher. And that is courtesy of my children. So maybe I'll go with that because we have chats about that every once in a while. But I guess it speaks to the fact that because of, I guess, my upbringing, being an immigrant, being in these transformative roles, I'm always in the midst of something that isn't going great. I'm very comfortable in the fact that things are messy. You've got to have partners, and you have to understand what value you're trying to do. You have to have a North Star so you know the direction of travel, and you have to be comfortable with skinning your knees. And so you have to have a little bit of toughness to you in order to do this type of work. But you also have to be willing to have the courage to put things out there that maybe are not the popular idea, to put ideas out there that maybe haven't been vetted, but ideas that are coming from a place of curiosity, of go and sees. They have a baseline and a grounding, but you have to be willing to be ambitious, have courage. And that's the only way to put points on the board. Otherwise, you're just sitting around, you'll get run over. Back to my quote.
So good. Thank you, Andrew Palmer, who I know, great, very talented leader. And I'm going to slide another mystery question in on the heels of Andrew's, which I think will also help us understand some of this, how you think and show up, this rhino personality, the animal spirit of yours. So listen into our last mystery question.
Okay.
I admire your work ethic. You're determined and don't take no for an answer. Where does this go get 'em or get it done attitude come from?
Ooh, do you recognize that voice, Monica?
Absolutely. That is my son, my high schooler. I love it. Thank you for including him. My goodness. I was not expecting that. What a surprise.
That's is a great question, and I've got to give thanks where it's due. Maybe your husband, maybe Palmer. I had a lot of helpers here. Liz Pollock.
Wow.
It was a big crew to get this young man, and he was excited. So, where's that come from? I love that. Go get him. Get it done attitude.
Yeah, and he's getting a big dose of that now that he's in high school. I'm always like, go get him. Don't be worried. Just go do it. So he's hearing it from mom a lot. Determination. I have to give my parents the credit here, because in Portugal, you are trying, they were in a place in the 80s trying to make a go at life and all these goals and aspirations. And then one day they realized it wasn't going to work. The opportunities weren't there. They don't have, college education or anything. So no skills. And they said, America's the place to go. And they packed up their bags and got a visa, got on a plane without speaking the language, without really knowing what to do and where to go. They obviously knew that Newark, New Jersey had a Portuguese population. They knew one or two other people that had come and had their phone numbers. And, we got to sleep on their couch a little bit, but it's like a week or two. That's it. And that determination to say, I may not know the path, but I have conviction, and I believe in myself, and I believe in those around me, that we can get to where we want to go. And seeing my parents being able to do that and being at the front row of that experience as a child, and like I said, an only child, so I was always at the adult table hearing adult conversation about how hard it was, how many challenges there were. My favorite story from my parents, I'll share it here, is my mom was driving a very used car in snow in New Jersey, and the bottom of the footbed rest where you accelerate and decelerate had rusted out. And we were having dinner. I remember this distinctly because my dad went and got cardboard, gave it to her, and was like, here's your answer, cardboard. You will now put cardboard over the hole. That's how we will solve it. And so that determination that, like, yes, you will have setbacks. Yes, you will make mistakes. Yes, it won't be perfect. However, you've got to have this mindset of, if I have the discipline, if I work hard and have grit, if I have the right people in the right place, if I have the alignment, we will get through it. We will not only get through it, but we will produce outcomes. We will put points on the board. And more importantly, we are doing this for a bigger mission than just ourselves. It's not about me saying, oh, I'm successful. In fact, I never show up saying Monica's successful. I'm always thinking about it from the lens of my team. And my team is both technology and cross-functional partners that have rallied to get this done. And that's always my frame of mind. When I think about my work ethic or determination, it comes from that place of like, we are going to be successful. And I always tell my son that, who was the mystery questionnaire there. I always tell him that, and I'm sure he will hear this podcast. And he'll be pleased to hear that everything I tell him, that's what I'm telling myself too. And so it's just, I think, like a philosophy and a way of being that I both appreciate from how my parents raised me, but also from the mentors that I've had the privilege of learning from, the colleagues that I have the privilege of working with, the leaders that I get to work for, all in creates this awesome set of experiences that shape who you are as an individual. And I'm definitely a product of that. So I'm very lucky.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Mr. Kyle and Jonathan, for all the help here to make this work. And I was glad to see you start smiling because I wasn't sure how this could go. Right? Sometimes you get something like that, you're never sure how that'll.
Yeah.
That was special. Last question for you, Monica, and it's around the scholarship, our Tech for Good scholarship, and
love it.
You do so much inside of Liberty for your people, and I know it matters to you. You also do a lot externally, and so as you know, we donate over $100,000 of scholarships to our leadership program. So I know you have a lot of nonprofits that you're associated with. Anyone that stands out, you think you'd love to get this scholarship?
I love this so much, this opportunity, and me going to college and being also a beneficiary of scholarships. This is so important. So thank you for doing this, and I'm so pleased to be part of this. I would love to nominate the National Society of Black Engineers to receive the scholarship, NSBE. It's an organization among many that we are connected with, but I just love the mission that they're on. And their journey is about increasing the number of Black engineers in the community in tech. And I love how they are connecting both academically, showing up to support academics, but also then helping them professionally as Black engineers come out into jobs and giving them resources and support to help them be successful. And then also giving it back to the communities and impact to the community so that, that continuous, I call it a continuous thread of goodness, but, really touching people at different points in time, but also connecting all the dots. I love how they're doing that and would love for this to be given to the National Society of Black Engineers.
Fantastic. They are a great organization. They are definitely, to use some of your quotes, they are definitely putting points on the board. They are definitely focused on outcomes.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that. So we will definitely get
wonderful
them through you, and congratulations. We'll promote them too. So
thank you.
Well, we are at the end of our time. I could go all day with you, Monica, but I know you've got a lot going on, and really charged up for this. And
thank you.
We're going to spend a little more time, and people know that a week from now, we're going to post an article on CIO.com. And I'd like to unpack you're doing some amazing things around data, AI.
Yeah.
Your Gen AI story is really special there. So I'm hoping you can kind of open the kimono a little bit there and just how you build digital acumen across your company as well. And so thank you in advance for that, but we'll have some more fun there. But thank you so much. It was so fun.
Yeah, it was a blast. Thank you for the invitation and for, the mystery questionnaires. They were surprise and fun to hear. And so I appreciate that very much. It's just fabulous. Thank you.
Excellent. And I want to hear from the audience. What's that it thing you just heard from Monica? So send me a note. I want to hear from you, and y'all stay well. And Monica, be well, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you.
You've been listening to Tech Whisperers, inside the playbook of the best digital leaders, a Woolette and Associates podcast. Keep connected with us by subscribing to the show in your favorite podcast player. If you like what you've heard, please rate the show, as this helps us connect the world's best digital leaders with those who aspire to learn, grow, and thrive in this amazing profession. Thanks for listening. Until next time.